Hey there, folks. Andre the Game Idea Guy here, and I'm going to be talking about Stellar Blade. Obviously, I don't have a PS5, so I'm not talking about it from play experience, and I'm not talking about it like I'm trying to bash on it. Just some observations, basically surrounding the community at large, and the community's observations when it comes down to Stellar Blade. So, firstly, I'm going to just go ahead and say that the community deciding that the game is a flop is, it's a little out there for me. And I'll get into the reasons. I'll explain them. But there's also like this, I don't know what it is when it comes down to how people actually treat stuff. When it comes down to Sony, I mean, there's like this rabid fanboyism where everybody has to talk up everything Sony has, but then they don't actually go buy the games the way that they're talking about them. So I'm like, but firstly, I don't think Stellar Blade is a flop. I don't. Just because it took it about 2 months to get near 1 million units or around 1 million units, give or take. I don't think that constitutes a flop for them, especially since Shift Up is not a large scale team. And on top of that, it's a Korean team, so their costs are different than over here in the US for the same type of work. So, the game more than likely didn't cost them much to actually make. And a lot of people's estimates are based off of the whole team working on the game, which is not likely in my eyes. I don't think that they put their whole team on that game because they had other stuff that they had to work on. So, the cost of development for this game may be much lower than people think it is. And there's this thing where people are going with assumptions that Sony spent buku bucks to advertise this. But when I look back at it, I don't see a lot of advertising from Sony. I see a lot of people talking about the game around the advertising from Sony. Whether that is positive or negative talking, I see more people talking about the advertising than the actual advertising. So, especially in this online-centric community, a lot of people are talking about it in the gaming sphere. That doesn't account for all of the people outside of the online bit of the gaming sphere that may be interested in other things and may never have even heard of Stellar Blade. And it also doesn't account for, and this is a personal belief, but Sony has 50 million units out in the wild. I'm thinking at least a third of those are still in the hands of scalpers. I mean, I don't have an exact way to prove it, but when you see how games do versus, like, you look at the popularity of something, and it's a skewed viewpoint, I'll admit, but you look at how popular something is online, and maybe even hear people talking about it outside of being online, and then you see what happens with the sales numbers for some of these games as they come to PS5, and it doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, there's so many people hyping this up, and hyping, and then it just doesn't do the numbers you would think it gets for all of the hype. But then again, I'm starting to think that that's generally the online community anyway, because people will get super hyped about something and then never at all touch it. They will get super hyped and then never touch it. Sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's not. Like, some people just like to have talking points to be able to say, oh yeah, we got this, y'all ain't got that, and this is rated better than yours. Meanwhile, they have not once touched a game in the series. So we gotta take that a little bit with a grain of salt. But when I look at it, I'm just going by what Shift Up said. For them, the game was profitable. They made money, which in turn to me makes me believe that, okay, the game's development cost couldn't have been that high if they can sell 1 million units and make profit off of it. To me, that just doesn't, those two things don't correlate like that. Like, you can't have the company making money off of the game if the game is a flop at 1 million units sold. And we got to start changing the definition of what a flop is for how people talk about it. Because in this sense, the game doing well enough to make a profit but not doing well enough to meet the fan expectations, that's not a flop. A flop would be like the Tomb Raider reboot when it happened, selling over 5 million units, but Square Enix didn't make a dime off of it at that point. That's a flop. Because you haven't made your return on investment yet. You haven't made the money back you spent. That's a flop. It's not about the number of units it sold. It's about how much money it made. That would make it a flop. And it's just like, it's a horrible way to look at things. Oh, it didn't sell the number of units I think it sold. It should have sold, so it's a flop. No. There are games that have sold better than some other games that just haven't made their money back because of how much it cost to produce and advertise those games. Simple as that. And I could keep harping on this until I'm blue in the face, and well, people will agree, but they'll still turn back around and say, but I want my graphics. I want my 4K resolution. I want my like, y'all gotta stop with this. My ray tracing, I need it. No, you don't. You don't. I'm gonna need that Unreal Engine 5 that works completely against the way these consoles are designed, but still gives me these really pretty rocks over here. I don't know why I use that voice. And if there's somebody that sounds like that, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, that voice even messed me up. But listen. Gosh, I need to focus. Stellar Blade making the team that made it a profit means that the game was a success. Doesn't matter how low its sales were. If it sold 500,000 units and they made money, that was a success. Now, do I think it should have sold more? Based around how everybody was getting hyped up over this game? Yes, I do think it should have sold more. And even with the negative stuff coming out about the censorship for the game, which that's still a thing, it still drew attention to it. And there were some people that decided they were going to buy it even just because of the fact that it was talked about. But I honestly do think that the game should have sold more. It looks like a fun game. It looks like it plays really, really well. Even though people try to compare it to Bayonetta, I still look at it as slower than Bayonetta. I mean, I can see the comparison, but it looks like it moves more like a Souls game than it does Bayonetta. Or like some middle ground between the two, I should say. But either way, it looks like it's a fun game. And if I don't have a PS5 by the time it comes out on PC, I'm more than likely picking it up on PC. And yes, because at this point, it is a foregone conclusion it's going to make its way to PC. Even if they didn't have initial plans to do that, it's going to make its way to PC. Which will just make them more money. But either way, I think people are being too hyperbolic. Like, it's one thing to point out that, it didn't sell as much as everybody hyped it up to be. There's one thing to point that out. But it's another thing to basically say it failed at its job when it didn't. It didn't fail at what it was supposed to do. It was profitable. So it didn't fail in that regard. Should it have sold more? Yeah, I do think it should have sold more because it does look like it's a quality game. It looks fun. It looks interesting. So I think it should have sold more. But me thinking it should have sold more does not mean it failed. So people got to get out of that mindset. We really got to get out of that mindset. Because that's one of the reasons that the gaming community is so scrambled. And it's one of the reasons that games industry doesn't make the money it should. Because we're sitting here waiting for people to make games with 20 and, well, not 20, 200 to $3 million budgets and expecting them to get their money back off of making sales of the game at half its price and selling 5 million units. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen that way. It don't work that way. And you know what? One thing I really dislike now is that I talk about sales of games. Because it's part of the subject that gets bounced around. I don't like that I talk about game sales now. But since it's part of what the community started talking about, and I got dragged into that being a part of the community, now I'm sitting here like, oh nah, this game didn't do so bad. And look at what it did, and then you got to think about how much it potentially costed to make this. My best guess at the cost to make this game was probably around 22 to 25 million. And that's based off of the general salaries for the cost of the developers to put their effort into it, as well as potentially thinking that maybe at maximum probably half of Shift Up's staff was working on this game, because I doubt their whole team was. Again, they do have other games they had to work on. And you don't set every member from your team on one game if you can avoid it. That's how you make money in the games industry as a developer, is by working on multiple projects at the same time in smaller teams. At least that was the way it worked for the best. And I don't think that a Korean-led team is going to throw all of their personnel on one game, even if it is a commissioned game from a console manufacturer. They're more than likely not going to do that, because they still have to maintain their other projects that they have out there. So, if Shift Up says it was a success for them, it's a success. Which means that there may be more games like Stellar Blade in the pipeline for them at some point. That's a good thing. There shouldn't be any discussion beyond that. There shouldn't be any need to talk about things beyond that. If they made their money, they made their money. That means any sales now are just icing on the cake, and they are doing better and better for it. That's it. There should be no other arguments there. Okay? Okay. But seriously, I wish we really didn't focus so much on sales in the gaming community, outside of, hey, if this game made a profit, I'm happy because I want more of it. That's it. That's the only place we should go when it comes down to sales. But I want to call it quits here. Thank you guys very much for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out, folks. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. If you would be interested in supporting my efforts in content creation, please head on over to Amazon and look up The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search, and you will find both Volume 1 and Volume 2 up for sale. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to be able to create more content for you in the future. Peace out.